Capture 4, Colonial Development. 1651 to 1763. That's such a question. How did development American identity unite the colonies? American stories online. Colonial culture the third trade. Section 1. New England. Commerce and religion. A person provision of Common School Navigation Acts. Provision religious freedom. Smuggle and subsistence farming. A 7 for 1. 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 8, 9, 2, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. There's 30 for colony words, okay? It's 30. That's way too much, but send it to the top of colony. Vocabulary, artistic, backcountry, crash crop, Indian, overseas, playbout, and the Stonewall Rebellion. Essentially free. The middle colonies. Key vocabulary. Arable, commodity, currency, wagon, conformity, diverse, Christian bill, intolerance. Section 4. Roots of American democracy. Key vocabulary. Merchant alignment, awakening, liberal midlife, natural rights, harmony, secular neglect, and savant. At section 5. That's fast. That's not really sensible. This is the most session, I feel. Section 5. The French Indian War and Indian War. Key vocabulary. Trading post, treaty. Most target T. Second letter is R. Oh. Reading strategy. Identify main details and main idea detail. To identify main idea and detail, state the most important find facts that support it. Use jargon like this to find the main idea details about development of the colonies. Read the country. Colonial development. Main idea blank. Detail blank. Detail blank. Detail blank. And here's the picture. See, there's a house right there. The rest is not a house. What the fuck? Cold for the day. The ground is very fruitful and produces productive, colorful crops with great speed. Nathaniel Streetley, author and British Army officer. And here's the rest of the map. Hopefully this capture, I will have to try and change the text again. Because I really have no idea what happened last time. Because that's not going to happen. Quick reviewing. The Piedmont in Virginia and North Carolina shown here is a line of rolling hills in rich farmland. How does this photo illustrate in its description in the quotation above? Quotation. And here's, before we start 1.1, here's a wheel. I don't know why there's a wheel, but okay. Sperm birds, like this one shown here, have huge heads and a full set of teeth along the inside of their long jaws. Colonial whalers frequently hunted this type the whale venturing far out to sea to search for it. The oil of these whales were more likely than other whale oils and made found candles, which became important export items. Alright. 1.1. Harvesting land and sea. In 1700 New England, you basically had two choices: toil day and night as a farmer, or toil day and night as a sailor. Neither option left much time for anything else. Main idea: New England economy was made of agriculture, commerce, and small-scale fishery. Manufacturing, farming, farming, hailing, rocky land. Most New England colonists were farmers. Their farms were small, located in hilly and forest land with rocky soil. The long, cold winters made for a short growing season. Farmers rely on their large families to clear the fields, kind of harvest the crops, and tend the farm animals. It's all added up to cycle up some intensive farming. This means the farming produces about enough food provided for the family for only a little if any, but over to sell or trade. In other words, they're very scraping by. Because farming was so tough, the size and quality of families' farmland uh, mattered. mattered. Colonists were at the mercy of the town's primitive founders, who led the church in the town. The founders decided the location and about the last family received. One map maybe given 50 acres with grazing fields attached. Another only 3 acres with grazing fields a mile away. It wasn't fair, and these differences lacked ownership created the sun classes within the town. This is a harpoon. This is what they use. Hurry up. Whalers used harpoons to study and capture the prey. Sailors launched rowboats from the ship, surrounded the whale, and threw their weapons once the whale was fully immersed by harpoons, which were attached to rope. The sailors towed the huge animal back to the ship. Fishing, whaling, and trade. Yeah, like, I like the ocean trade. Greater economy opportunities in agriculture. Colonial fishes could get trade selling their catch to London merchants exchange for goods such as shoes, textile, and metal products. Whale provided the colonists with many commercial products, including whale oil, waxes, meat, fat, bones, and leather. Colonists sold and exported the whale meat and blubber, or fats. People use the blubber to light oil lamps, make candles, and soften leather. Fishing really led to the growth of a shipbuilding industry. New England's plentiful forests supplied the shipyards with timber and employment. Building a single ship could employ 200 workers. Ship workers also kept sawmills, rope makers, and iron founders busy. By the end of the 1700s, basically the one-third of all the inventions is fishing ships. This economic activity made New England in the 19th century a colonial trade. Historic thinking. One region. What four economic activities were important in New England? Two, draw conclusions. What conclusion can you draw by the relationship between the family's farm and its social class? Three, another environment concept. In what way were the goods environment and electric oceans, natural systems essential to livelihood, economy, culture of New England colonists? 1.2 Colonial trade. It was good to be a trader in New England. The region's shipyards turned out many ships to carry goods along the North American coast and across the Atlantic. In colonial trade were a race, the merchants of New England were winning. Idea. New England merchants expanded the colonial economy through electric trade. Trade in the Latin, as its fishing and whaling industry continued to thrive. New England found itself at the center of America's trade. New England merchants traded with other colonies. They also engaged in direct trade with Europe. Soon, the New England merchants could chief traders along the coast from Newfoundland to Georgia. The merchants, the merchants also conducted business through the triangle trade, and instead learned the triangle trade routes across the Latin and North America, Europe, and Africa. New England merchants sent goods such as rum to continental Europe. The merchants received important goods including wine, food, and salt from islands off the coast of North Africa. Mussels, rum, sugar, and dyes came from the Caribbean. Food and drink were the only goods merchants New New England merchants traded. As he had noted, the merchants also acquired enslaved people from Africa in exchange for rum and other goods. The growth of trade across the ocean Atlantic created great demand for sailors and other workers, shipbuilders and sailmakers, crafted vessels. Suppliers stocked ships of provisions, which consisted of the food, water, and other supplies needed for the voyage. Log workers loaded and unloaded goods on railroad transport in cars. As a result of the thriving trade, port cities sprung up in New York, Philadelphia, and Charleston. After 1750, colonial trade was no longer dominated by the merchants of Boston and other port cities in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. I bet you this. And this is the triangle trade. I'll take a picture of it. You have more than 1 second to that. Colonial trade and goods. Or to take pictures if you want to. You have to be, you do really want to. Wait, the colonial trade. Again, the colonial economy depended on ship trade goods between North America, Europe, and Africa. So did the economies of most European countries. France, England, the Netherlands, Portugal, and Spain were willing to fight for a share of the wealth the trade routes generated. Many ships on the triangle trade routes sailed on between North America and Africa, or Europe and Africa. What? Some ships bound for New England also stopped in Brazil or the Caribbean, where some enslaved Africans on board were sold. Wow. Well, can't fit the whole team. So that's it. That's the least we do. Alright, 3, 2, 1, you're done. Oh, sorry, 3, 2, 1, yeah, go. Blackbeard the pirate. Smuggling was not the only illegal activity in the high seas. Pirates pounded the Atlantic looking for ships and cargoes to steal. One such pirate was called Blackbeard. According to some, the English pirate's real name was Edward Cheech. He tried making his parents frightened by putting pieces of burning rum under his hat. As shown in the illustration, for 2 years he and his parents terrorized merchant ships in the Atlantic Caribbean. In 1718, Blackbeard met his end At the heads of Lieutenant Robert Maynard of the Royal Navy. Maynard chopped off the pirate's head and threw his body overhead. And this is a picture of it. It's the whole picture because the whole picture. Take a picture of this. 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 0. Bro, stop. Hold on. Yeah, that's good enough. Oh, that's fine. Alright. England's cut of profits when economy New England's economy New England began to earn huge profits from trade. The English society began taking the cut. The share of the profits, the English passed the series law called the Navigation Act in 1651. The Act required that goods for profit to England or its colonies in Asia, Africa, and America be carried on English ships or ships made in the colonies. Furthermore, the Act identified the list as the colonial products that could only be sold to England or its colonies. These products include tobacco, sugar, cotton, and dyes. The Acts also made sure that England controlled and taxed all trade and from the colonies. So, for instance, all European goods bound for the colonies had to go to England first. There, English dockworkers could unload, inspect, and reload the goods back onto English or colonial-made ships. These ships then carried the goods to colonial ports where the English charged the taxes on the airports. First of all, for the colonies, the English taxed all colonial goods that were not going to be shipped to England. Unsurprisingly, uh, the colonies which resented the digital charges to products going in both directions. Some colonists turned to trading goods legally or smuggling. The colonists fired hard control as resistance attempts to enforce the acts. While New England colonists protested the treatment on the hands of the English government, many of their own society had far more costs for complex. The enslaved African Americans and certain protest groups were powerless to charge the situation. Historically speaking, one region. What different kinds of trade did New England and merchants carry out? To an outside constant effect. Why did Parliament pass the Navigation Act? 3. Interpret maps. How did the items sent from North America differ from those exported from Europe? 1.3. Society and religion. New England, some African Americans before taxes and were not able in other colonies. Some colonists far from equal treatment. Main idea. New England was different from other colonial regions in terms of its use of enslaved labor and religious views. Enslaved labor in New England. Enslaved African Americans accounted for only 2 to 3% of New England's population. Next, first. This was really due to colonial opposition to enslavement. Some of the wealthiest New England merchants made their money in the slave trade. The low percentages was due to geography and economics. New England farmers were generally small, but colonial farmers had no need for large numbers of slave workers, and declared it fortunate anyways. The enslaved African Americans who came to New England worked as household servants, farmhands, artisans, and laborers. In Southern colony slaveholders generally wanted to purchase enslaved people who worked in fields immediately, but slaveholders in New England were more willing to purchase young people who trained their specific household or business duties. These people generally lived in their masters' houses and worked by their sides. They practiced card printing, baking, and making clothes, shoes, and clothing. Among other traders, among other trades in seaport towns, enslaved African Americans sometimes worked along the free African Americans in the shipyards and on the docks as fishers, wheelers, and ship builders. Some African Americans were born free, but most free African Americans spent part of their lives in enslavement. Some achieved freedom and fulfilled the terms of their work contract. Some escaped. Others were freed by their masters for faithful service or as part of their master's will. Although both enslaved and free African Americans in England enjoyed some legal rights, they were not treated equally. For example, in 1703, the Massachusetts law stated that African Americans could not be outdoors after 9 p.m. unless they were on business for their masters. The client prejudice. Some religious groups were treated unfairly, although not to the extent suffered by African Americans. The person sought order to the groups such as the Quarters and Baptists as a threat to the harmony of society. Therefore, Puritan leaders allowed only the male members of the Puritan Church to vote and hold most public offices. Puritans clashed with art, Protestant sects, and disagreed with the teachings. They punished citizens for not sharing their beliefs and even hate such a quarter of missionaries. They also objected to a newly emerging merchant class and its focus on commercial values and worried that the younger generation was only concerned about making money. Beginning in 1615, membership in the Presbyterian Church had begun to decline, especially yeah, especially along the courses who was deported from I courses who had been deported from Massachusetts coming back. King Charles II of England sent a letter forbidding the execution of quarters. The quarter communities in Massachusetts commercials and flowers throughout New England. The Crown gave the pretty two options. They could either obey the terms of the charter or have the charter revolted. The charter gave religious freedoms or the right to practice the religion of one choosing for all. But the party's leaders believed themselves believed themselves to be the highest authority as Massachusetts did not feel that they were actually king. Charles II disagreed. 1684, the king canceled the colonial charter of Massachusetts Bay. Charles died in 1685, but that did not do the purchase any good. Charles' successor, James II, tried to strengthen each colony even more. He combined the Massachusetts with other Northern colonies to form the dominant of New England. Eventually, the dominant included Massachusetts Bay, a Falmouth, New Hampshire, Maine, Rhode Island, Kentucky, New York, and New Jersey. Both decisions to create the dominant and to appoint its new governor were extremely unpopular to colonists. They felt stripped of the rights and freedoms that they had enjoyed under the old colonial charts. In 1991, Massachusetts received a new charter to replace the one the King's Charter had canceled. It guaranteed religious freedom for all Protestants, further undermining party influence. It also opened to opened the right to vote to the result charter led to every problem in March greater. It also opened the right for any profit and religion. There were property owners who much greater than the number. It guaranteed religious freedom for both persons to buy pretty influence. It also opened up the right to vote to any owners in the trade and the churchgoers. So the result, the charter led to a large increase in number of foreign unions. The pretty decline that it could do anything without the rights. The decline knew a lot new knowledge could the new party to colony. And this new British Museum of, of American of arts, art New British gentlemen with attendance between 1785 and 1788. Artists Ralph Earl criticized the enslaved African Americans in New England as serving their masters more directly. This is contrast to slavery in the Southern colonies, who were enslaved people worked in fields far from the owners under the supervision of hired bosses. Story 50, one region. By the 5th century, a new enslaved African Americans low in New England to identify many Indians and details. What the types of tax most enslaved and free African Americans do before. Analysis cause and effects. What impact did the city did that 91 Massachusetts Charter have a prejudice? Looking for education and literacy. Why do you read? Probably for fun it's or to learn new things. Colonial children mostly learn to read so they could understand the Bible. The idea education and literacy were important to New England colonies. It had a major impact on the region's economic and social development. American American placement. Harvard University of Cambridge, Massachusetts. Harvard began as a private college, still is. Founded while Charles River in 1636 to educate ministers of the church. It's called Harvard after John Harvard for England, who left a gift of 779 English pounds and 4 books to college. It increased matter. John's the sandwiches, who you have read about, were both students there. Matter later served as a college president, 92 to 1701. The student housing shown here opened in 1931. Bro, how does this work though? I swear, such like there's houses like Harvard literally lives. Harvard's like next to the ocean. Wait, so the baby drones. So this is how it looks like. So that's how it looks like. Sorry, a new, a new, a New England education. New Englanders believe that people need to be able to read, well, be able to learn about God. They set up schools that focus on the Bible, religious studies, and texts that follow moral behavior. In the 1640s, Massachusetts Leicester established college. The Colonial is named for electric school. The secondary school called Latin grammar schools. Kentucky, the other colony followed was similar advantage. Eventually, more people in New England were able to read than any in any other colony. Early education also involved teaching children skills that will help them thrive in their community. For many colonial boys, this meant becoming a profession. The profession lived with the master's craftsman for a set number of years in order in order to learn a trade such as uh, nurturing, baking, or carpentry. Girls, on the other hand, often stay with their mothers to learn cooking, sewing, and other skills necessary to manage a household. Community establishments, colleges for older students. The persons founded Harvard College, Massachusetts in 1636, and Yale College in Kentucky in 1701. Harvard and Yale joined William and Mary College in Virginia to make up the only three colleges in the colonies. All three have grown into modern universities that offer a wide range of subjects and chance to earn many different degrees. But what the heck? Why are there so much animals? Many degrees to earn many different degrees. Most of the graduates of colleges and members of the clergy. Now, not however were women, colonial colleges are all men. Newspaper. The rising rate of literacy throughout colonies began to create a big demand for newspapers and books. Starting in 1704, newspapers popped out in Boston, Philadelphia, New York, and Charleston. These early newspapers focused on European events of politicals. They helped colonies feel less separate, far away Europe, and more connected to England. The general reading tastes in colonial people ranged across many subjects. The readers especially enjoyed topics unique to the American spirit. And New England, books about being captured by Native Americans attracted interests. The interest. One of the most popular of these by Mary, one of these was by Mary Rowland's son. In her account, she describes being taken prisoner with free trial during the King's War. The Native Americans who had captured her then released her for £20 ransom. After her husband, a minister, died, Rowland's son moved to Boston and wrote a story for which she is famous. Another favorite genre, the library to many types of useful information together in one volume. Paul Richards, Albert Puzzle, Richard Franklin provided a bestseller, makes calendars, information for the weather, and planting medical advice and weather for verbs such as fish and vegetables stink after 3 days. Also around this time, writers came to compose the first historian of their lives. They called this meanwhile to be South Slavic treatment was very typical politically with African slaves. And this is horror. I'll take pictures in 3, 2, 1, go. 3, 2, 1, 0. Last one. Poor Richmond's the Alabama. Alabama. Benjamin Ben Franklin created Alabama under the name Richard Sanders. He credited himself as the volume person. Story 50. One region. What kinds of schools the colonial New England established? Two, draw conclusions. One role the religion played in the importance of education in New England. Three, many generations. Religion. Why would newspapers and emphasis on European events and politicians be helpful to colonial merchants? 1.5 Natural Geography Explorer Donald Snyder. Snyder studies gravestones that this swim from 1729. It's an imaginary something like Daisy Wheels. Uh, Spittery, spiritually represented symbols. Graveyards, graveyards, building an American identity. Archaeologists adventure even graveyards and buildings have a side tale to tell. By Donald Slatcher. When Donald Slatcher was growing up at Massachusetts, his parents drove to the swim club during the summer. This one right here. During the summer, on the way, he passed an old graveyard that was caught his eye. It stood abandoned and distorted. The graveyard was tilted every which way. Some nearly falling over. I wish there was a story there. Some remembers thinking years later, secret archaeologists decided to uncover the stories and search sites himself. George Joyce provided students with a hands-on archaeological experience. Slater far left his colleges and students and to Rebecca Nurse Homestead to learn about Nurse who was a witch and hid in 1992. Of course, this. Come on, that doesn't even count. This is what I hate. I do 5. That's a problem. I don't want to do 5. I have to. The idea. Archaeologist Donald Slasher investigated colonial New England graveyard and architectural story about American culture. The Grave Whisperer. National Geographic explorer Donald Slasher studies graveyards from the 1600s and 1700s. Looking for him, he lives in New England, where there were a lot of graveyards from these periods. One of his favorites is the Old Burial Ground. Established in 1684 in Ipswich, Massachusetts, it contains the region's old documents, gravestones, include, gravestones, including those of the wife and children of John Woodthorne Jr., the town's chief founder. Johns were told to introduce the town's chief founder. As Slaughter examines a graveyard, he pays political attention to an autograph of the gravestones. The stones grave design, although the details are widely debated among scholars, some believe the changes design were to evolving religious ideas in the New England's colonies. A death head showing the stylized skull with rings across bones appeared on most early gravestones. As the early 16th century progressed, however, death heads were replaced by winged china or angel heads. Slater believes that religious movement in the 20s caused graveyard rapidly to suffer. This movement called the Great Awakening, you learn about what later is captured. It's starting the idea people descend to heaven, that they shouldn't their faith in God. Earlier, Potter believes that people's place after death, heaven or hell, was predestinated or determined by God and birth. At the same time, the anthems or inscriptions carved on the gravestones also became more helpful or hopeful. Instead of focusing on mortality, they it perhaps celebrate the decrease. Their influence celebrated the decreased reward in heaven for a life well lived. Some provided a brief narrative of a person's life. According to Slater, once an infant reveals that a man being was born enslaved but died free. American identity. Like gravestones, colonial architectural styles also evolved over time. Some of these changes reflect cultural changes and increasing American identity of the colonies. The early 1600s builders. Hey, well, get out! Why is there a fly? New England, based on their structures on architecture. And this. Slater reads a gravestone at the south of the Plowers Burial Ground in Aldor, Andover, Massachusetts, established in 1709. The cemetery is Andover's oldest museum. By instead of brick, the colonists most often used wood and other rustic building materials, which resulted in a uniquely American style. The builders adapted structures to conditions in the colony. For example, they constructed summer kitchens in the rear of the house to avoid heating up the entire home. Supply construction techniques they used in England. Much of New England is a treasure trove of colonial sites and artifacts. But what if you don't live there? Sorry, suggest you visit your local historic society to learn about early American sites in your community, including those of Native Americans, or ask your neighborhood librarian for information. All of these sources can help you discover your American identity. The Simon believes this is important as he says there is no better way to preserve our culture heritage than to educate today's youth on the subject. Because it is they who will be making tomorrow's decision that will determine wherever sites are protected or destroyed. Historic thinking. One region. What does Slaughter study when he investigated colonial graveyards? Two, another cause and effect. According to Slaughter, women and children have replaced dead heads on later graves. Three, main emphasis. What do you think that the art was developed by the early 1600s? New England colonists. Yeah. Here, come on! There you go. To be what? Slavery is bad. A person journey from New England to the southern colonies. The southern colonies would be amazed by its large constitutions. Quiet contrast to New England's small farm and the warm climate would probably made the traveler shed his or her jacket. What difference geography makes? Main idea, the southern colonies developed a system of plantations agriculture that relied on increasing numbers of enslaved Africans. Plantation crops. The geography of New England was very different from that of the southern colonies. The fertile land and mild climate, the southern colonies, Maryland, Virginia, and Carolinas, Georgia made it possible to grow crops grown for sale rather than for use by the farmers themselves. The main cash crops were tobacco, rice, and Egypt. The plants whose leaves provide a source of blue dye for clothes. Tobacco thrived in the hot and humid growing season of Virginia and coastal Maryland. Rice was well suited to the swampy lowlands, tidal areas, coastal rivers, the Carolinas. However, the colonists had no experience in rice cultivation. They depended on enslaved Africans who had been taken from rice-growing regions in West Africa. To farm the rice ensured successful yields. Plantations sprung up along the rivers, and plantations could use the water for the rice fields. So ships sailed up tributes from the Chesapeake Bay and docked at their plantations. Because of the ease of transporting goods directly from the farms, summer colonies had little need for port cities. One section was the the seaport of Charlestown, now called Charleston. As Carolina planters developed cash crops, Charlestown grew as a port. Many plantation owners lived there the part of the year. Many plantation owners lived there part of the year to escape addition of the plantations. Or Charlestown to the fourth largest colony city to Boston, Philadelphia, New New York. Let me see. In New York. In New York. He is in the bathtub. That definitely doesn't make sense. That shouldn't be closed. The bathroom is open. Boston, Philadelphia, and New York, India grew larger with English and New England shippers to control his trades. Without a strong rich community, the city felt to attract large numbers of new workers. New slave trading. Planters in the southern colonies originally hired white indentured servants to work for several years in stage upon land. But in 1698, England gave all English merchants permission to participate in slave trading. As a result, planters who lived in the Chesapeake sell land around the Chesapeake Bay turned to slave Africans to farm their land. In 1660, only 900 Africans resided in the Chesapeake, some of whom had arrived as servants and lived free. By 1720, one-fifth of the population of the area were Africans. 1770, That number ranged from one-third to one-half. African populations in Virginia and the Carolinas also increased dramatically during this period. By 1750, African Americans accounted for more than 40% of Virginia's total population, and more than half of South Carolina's. Damn, South Carolina's more than 90% of the total African American population was enslaved. Historically, one region. All tobacco and rice good crops, Virginia, Maryland, and the Carolinas. To outline visuals. After which step is the rice process are the grains of rice collected for identified main ideas and details. One factors led to the expansion of slave labor in southern colonies. Rice production. And what I think these Wiki How made this. Goes way similar to Wiki How. What's this is Wiki How. And that's a belt. Hold up. Let's go to the next one. This is probably the next one too. Yeah, eight. So that's what rice production. Rice production required many steps of preparing people to grow enough grain to make a profit. There are some steps of this later intensive process. Flooding. One flooding. Farming workers floodgates and dug ditches. They planted them, then opened the floodgates to fill the rice fields with water. If the seeds sprouted, the fields were drained so the woman could weed. The fields were re-flooded. Two, sorry, two of harvesting. The workers harvest or reap the reaping the ripped rice parts with a cutting tool called a sieve. Called a sieve. Uh, Strategy. Colonial plantation. Uh, treasury of threshing. They meeting plants with a stick called the frill to the grain fell from the plants. It looked like the brown tea. Four. Uh, Windowing. Windowing was the process of tossing the rice grains in the basket, separating from the tissue like iron coating or chaff. And this is how it looks like. It's to take pictures if you want to, but this is how it looks like. 3, 2, 1, go. You can take pictures if you want to. I don't care, but you take pictures if you want to. Okay. What the heck? But why is there a spider? Leave! Bro, why is there always a spider in the area? Yeah, you scared now, little boy. Get out of here. I have to go somewhere where no one can attack me. Alright, that's enough. In 1915, when the photographers were, bruh, when the photographers were taken, since slavery had been abolished, workers still used tools similar to the ones that had been used more 400 years earlier ago. 5. Pounded. The windows rice was poured into the hollowed out logs and pounded with a stab called a mortar. This removed the tough iron husk from the grain. So 4 and 5 are actually old pictures. 1, 2, 3 are just Wiki How. So you go Wiki How to this and there be Wiki How because it's Wiki How. Come on. Alright, 2.2. 2.2. From plantations to the back country. There's a saying that the rich get richer, and it seemed to true on the large plantation. More land is slaves meant more cash crops and more money. My idea. Main idea. Life in the coastal areas of southern colonies differed freely from land life and preferred inland. It evolves, revolves steadily around slavery, wealth and class. Over time, wealthy uh, plantations in Maryland, Virginia, and the Carolinas found more land and slaves. The Hispanic plantations include increasing amounts of tobacco, rice, and indigo. The owners reap the products, the profits. Not all farmers became wealthy, but the owners, the largest potentials became so wealthy and powerful and distant classes for one of the some farmers with the largest homes and luxury lifestyle rich landowners that live like nobles in Europe. An army of slaves made it this way of life possible. The work of slaves formed dependent on where they lived in South Carolina. Each it's like people, a person received certain jobs including each day, a field to hoe, a festival, and the cheesecake. The most enslaved people work on the plantation for a specific number of hours until the overseer or supervisor told them to stop. The result, many slaves worked long into the night. But some plantation owners treated enslaved people fairly well, others did not. The terrible of workload took its toll. Oh, why are you staring at me? Dude. I nah. I see this one. Bro, bro, I do this anymore. Twerkle, twerk, it's told. Bro, I do a terrible workload took this toll on. No, I'm not! Stop making me do stuff! But the terrible workload took its toll on all the laborers. As work increased and hours grew even longer, death rates among the enslaved people surged dramatically. The bad country. Different kind of culture rose. He's gonna make me walk. I'm not walking! Why does he hate me, bro? Hate that kid so much. He's trying to bother me every single day. I'm supposed to be. I'm literally falling because of him. He's taking my computer away from me. Hate him. The back country. Without walking. The back country. Different kind of culture rose as some settlers in the southern colonies sowed their fortune in the back country. Back country stretched along the absolute mountains from Pennsylvania south from the Central Valley to the Carolinas. This region included rich soil, rolling hills, and deep forests of the Piedmont, a really flat area between the mountains and the coastal plain. The early 1700s, European settlers such as the Scots, Irish immigrants from the northern part of Ireland came to the colony, settling that country, establishing farms outside the first into settlement. Carving their farmland out of the forest, backcountry farmers learn how to simply. They use one of plentiful natural resources of this region. Timber to build simple log cabins, They hunted and raised enough crops and livestock to feed their fish, feed their families. I can't do it. Oh, I could do that if I want to. I could do that if I want to. Do that. Country farmers learned to build self-sustaining. They use one of the most painful natural resources of this region. Timber to build a simple log cabins. They hunted and raised enough crops as livestock to live in their families. Women in the backcountry were in the home, the field, and the wild. They didn't carry guns, and unlike many people in South colonies, most of the immigrants living in the backcountry didn't rely on slaves. Historically, one region was so strong that the chiefs came in 1600 to compare contrast. High work patterns different for slaves. South Carolina, the chiefs came free, and another cause and effects. How did the environment of the back country affect how the people settling there made a living? Whoa! Settle, Settle Valley. Is 300 Scots, Irish sailors who had come to Pennsylvania and then moved into the Central Valley in present-day West Virginia and Virginia. So the rich soil, the valley, living a dream of farming, and at the time, the Scots Irish had looked co- 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 compet- competition competition from other Europeans. They then, however, compete for the land with Native Americans who had long called the region home. That's it. And this is how the Central Valley looks like. Where did I go? 2.3 Life under slavery. After days of hard work, enslaved Africans gathered together, sometimes secluded on Sundays. They cooked African foods, they played music on the African rhythms. As much as they could, they hugged down to pieces of the past. The idea potential slaves kept their African culture and traditions alive, even though their living and working conditions were often very difficult. Living conditions. As you read, like plantation slaves, both men and women, spent long hours planting, waiting, and harvesting tobacco, rice, and Egypt. Overseers sometimes use whips and other harsh instruments and measures to force workers to work harder and more productively. Some owners also recruited things called drivers to push their fellow workers to pick up the pace. Work in some owners' household was sometimes less brutal. Both men and women cooked and did garden chores. Women often took care of the children as well. Some men could artists are still workers. The artisans are still workers who carry practices by hand. Some were women such nurses and weavers. Fortunately, some women were working at fields and households. Sometimes subject to sexual abuse that has been billed as slaveholders. The attention, this attention this one unwanted attention reflecting American slave. How come on? The next one. Some more. Slave housing. Only 9 of the 27 slave houses that once stood in Boone um, plantations near Charleston, South Carolina, still remain. The houses together made what I call a slave street. The nine houses provided prepared the photograph were home to the servants at the plantation house. Each house was divided into two rooms and had either a dirt or a wooden floor. Dirt floors were common in the houses provided for slaves. And this is how it looked like. I looked to take a picture of it. In three, two would go. Three, two, one, zero. That's it. There's no point taking a picture of it because none of you are even watching my videos. That's a problem. I just so want to do this. So bored. See? See, that's why. It reflected the American system of slavery in which people were considered to be the owner's property. The violence committed against enslaved women was central to the system. Slaves often built their own houses, which were typically one-room cabins. They plantators provided own basic foods for enslaved workers, such as corn and a little pork. Enslaved people often planted gardens with vegetables like yam and squash and added to diet. They also raised hogs and chickens and hunted for fish for extra food. People from different West Africa often found themselves thrown together on large plantations. To speak to each other, they blended the African languages with English. By this means, such African words as yam and tochi were introduced to the English language. African influence, African influence colonial culture as well as that of early national America in many other ways. The music had a huge impact on jazz and blues. He also made clay pottery, baskets, and musical instruments with African designs. He also popularized new foods including orchid, melons, and bananas. In Boston, a slave taught his owner the practice of fascination, which he had learned in Africa. As a result, the slaves helped the city's people were protected from a smallpox outbreak. After rebelling, enslaved people did what they could to cope with the situation, but many activated, actively rebelled in their treatment resisted the slave owners' power by staging slowdowns, faking illness, and soon destroying crops and tools. Others ran away. Some enslaved people became violent, killing the slave owners or setting fire to fields and homes. In 1739, a group of more than 50 enslaved people revolted near the Stone River in South Carolina. The liver, the leader, not liver, the leader, what leader was literature slave named Jemmy, also called Cottrell, whose masters had fought to read and write. When armed plantators defeated their rebellion in battle, some of the slaves headed to the state of Oxton, Florida, where the Spanish government had promised them freedom. But South Carolina, the militia persecuted them, putting to death everyone suspected of being involved. Although similar rebellions had already taken place in the middle colonies, the Stone Rebellion stemmed fear throughout the American colonies. South Carolina legislature it had a harsh slave code in 1740 in an effort to prevent future revolt. The new code made all enslaved people determined permanent slaves. In addition, the code the prohibits enslaved people from learning to read and write. In spite of the new law, prior to the new law, some slaves did learn to read and write, and this knowledge, the use of knowledge to tell the stories, to let the world, let the world what was happening to them. And this is a bad joke. After this, a competition played on instruments made of with a gourd cut in half, with a goat skin stretched over him, a stick of three strings, and banjo shown here was made in Baltimore, Maryland, early 1845. This banjo, the ground had been replaced with a circle with wooden frame and the stem of flat piece of wood, and our modern version frame is sometimes made now. Start thinking. One region. One measure the owners used to force slaves to work harder. Two, identify maintain and detail. What are some ways in which enslaved people assess their history and keep their traditions alive? Three, not as cause and effect. What were some of the long-term negative consequences of stoner rebellion on enslaved people? 2.4 document-based question. Slave narrators. After gaining their freedom, some former slaves wrote about their experience and culture they endured. They want to open people's eyes to enjoy slavery. Um, Olo was born in Benin, a part of Africa that you have learned about previously. Equally was sold to slavery at the age of 11. 10 years later, he bought his freedom from the last owner, a quarter from Philadelphia. He made his own way to England, where he lectured on the evils of slavery. In 1789, in London, Italy published his autobiography, an excerpt from which appears on the next page. He had an image showing him created for the books. For the book, comes so quickly, the popularity of the interesting daily life of the life of Oda, it could not contribute to a law being passed in England in 1807 that made slavery illegal in England as colonies. That then, as will learn, America was no longer a British colony. Critical view. Why do you think everyone wanted to have his portrait show him holding a book? It gave you from his books to introduce of life on the equality. And this is a picture of him holding a book. Only Kudas or Gutsfi Vasa. Yes, sir. Senior. Senior. WW1. His primary source autobiography. Come on. For the issue name of the life or 1789. It is expert for his autobiography describes the brutal condition aboard the slave ship during the passage from Africa to the Americas, the Nostrils Bill passage. Contrary response. What details help you understand the horror that the slaves endured in the Middle Passage? I will soon put down the distance and I received statue of box greeting in the nostrils. Albert, as I had never experienced in my life. So that with the loneliness of stress, smell, and cry together, I became so sick and low that I'm not able to eat it. Or no, I had the least desire to taste anything. Dot dot dot. Many a time we were we were near suffocation from the want lack of air fresh air, which we were often without for whole days together. This amid the stress of the two tubs carried off killed many. Document 2. Primary source autobiography from a narrative of the remarkable participants in the life of James Albert Eustace Gursa, the African prince as written all throughout the 1789, and that's when his related five stones, 1772. His album it was into slavery at age 15. Also, with his family, Wilson had lived the problems of sword merchant and violently left himself in Africa. He realized a mistake too late. Confronting himself. How does a merchant make the idea of going with him sound a fascinating, a fascinating adventure rather than an entry to a nightmare? By the time there was a merchant from the local he told me that if I wanted if I would go then I should see houses with ways to talk to them, walk upon the hill, walk upon the water. I should also see the white folks that and that he had many sons my age, which should be calm passwords. That he added all of this that he would bring me safe back again soon. Hi, please, with the account of this strange place and with this discussions of going. Document free. Primary source autobiography. The autobiography. From a narrative of the life and adventures of friendship, a Native American of life, but resident above 60 years in the North Central America, 1798. Venture Smith was born in West Africa, captured as a young child by the enemy army, and then was sold as a slave in Rhode Island. He published his autobiography in 1798. The Esper 1798. The Esper teaches how teaches how he attained the Esper details how he attained freedom for his family. Constructive response. What can you infer about the personal qualities that enable Venture Smith to accomplish all that he describes? Before being 50 years old, I left cold. Smith once for all, having paid a enormous sum for a fee, when I had raised enough money to purchase my two sons, I had to left more than 100 pounds. Dot. The rest of my money I laid out in land in addition to a farm which I owned before and dwelling in the house of freedom. In my 44 year, I purchased my wife, Meg. da da da, being of 14 years old. I found my oldest child Hannah. Da. I really redeemed my from I really from slavery. Myself, my wife, and my and three children. This is fine, right? Where we go. Reviewing a little bit about the slave trade. It's slavery in colonial America. Colonial America. Do recall. All people write the main ideas expressed in each document. 3. Construct a topic sentence that answers this question. This question: how did formally say persons dirt and overcome slavery. For right, using evidence from this capture the documents, writing informational paragraph that supports her Thomas sentence is step free. Sleeping one agricultural production. This is a farming have changed. Farmers today need fertile soil and good climate to grow abundant crops, just like their counterparts in the colony. Good climates in the middle colonies attracted immigrant farmers from Britain and other parts of Europe. Main idea. The fertile land of the middle colonies allowed the farmers to raise cash crops and livestock for sale and export, resulting in a booming economy. Farmland and freedom. Just like the settlers in New England and the Southern colonies, immigrants who came to the middle colonies of New York and New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware found ways to support themselves in the new environment. There were navigation rivers and harbors and rich farmland rolls across the region. The area's weather was warmer than New England's, but avoided distinctly huge fat far south. Settlers soon discovered that grains such as wheat, corn, rye, and barley. That is why I have this. So now I have to actually hear more. And make sure I don't have to do it. Because the proof concentrate maybe far from Britain. Or if bars are found in common, it's resolved the region the native very basket of the colony. Immigrants 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 from all over Europe heard about the urban or fertile land and decided to move to the middle colony, attracted by cheap land, limited government control, and religious tolerance. More than 100,000 Germans immigrated to the area between 1683 and 1783. The majority of Germans headed for the backcountry of Pennsylvania. They brought with them new farming techniques. Uh, techniques to provide shelter for their animals in the winter. Some farmers used indentured servants and enslaved people to tend their fields. As the settlers grew wealthier, they sold more of their harvest as cash crops and raised livestock and sell and export. The residents of the Red Basin enjoyed more prosperous lives than farmers in New England, which is due to the cost. For not directly to the settlers, but the growing farms to agile the Native Americans who lived on the land. Reach the mill. Many mill colonies, farmers and grew grains, and wheat was the most popular grain in colonial America. The plants made a final flour, then corn, which in turn produced the softer bread. Colonists joined wheat bread with their meat mills, but making the flour required grinding the grain by hand took a long time, resulting fine that was rough to texture. Farmers found they could save time and energy by taking their wheat to grist mill and milling that has machinery for grinding grain. Since humans and animal living with a short supply of the mineral colonies, main colonies, but their own gristmill near a river and harness the power of water to operate the gristmill. At the time, water mills were the latest technology. The water spun and wheeled outside that turned grinding stones within the gristmill. Workers called mills millers ran workers called millers ran the gristmill mills generally to the portion of the flour the part they ground as pavement. They also took other goods and exchanged. Some millers opened stores, sell the surplus flour, grain, or other goods. These stores, these stores became centers of communities. The neighbors would gather there to exchange goods and catch up on news. As demand grew, some builders bought larger mills or moved to build to a spot on the river for a faster currents. But not all the immigrants who came to the mill colonies became farmers or millers. Some settled in the city, hoping to find greater opportunities in the fast-growing coastal towns. How grist mill works with essentially with a few mill parts, the stone granite blocks. Those colonial grist mills were made of wood. Some foundations of stone. A channel called the mill race was dug from a stream or river to direct fast-running water to the water wheel. Water falling from the mill race turning the wheel. The moving wheel then turned gears inside the building, which rotated the top driving box. This this blocks this block can be raised and lowered to vary its closeness to the bottom block, depending upon the size of the grain being ground to the stone. As the top block turns, press and roll grains, cracking away the hard outer layers and getting all the parts into the soft floor. So that's the grain. That's the specific gates. That's the mill race. And that's the top stone that the roasted, and that's a bed stone that stays still. That's flour, and that's a water wheel. And this is how it looks like. That's how it works. Right. Story figure, we're reaching. Why would farmers in the middle colonies able to reach cash crops and livestock for still an export? To identify many ideas in detail. Why were the middle colonies called the bread basket of the colonies? 3. Another vision. Use the diagram to explain how the flour got into the sacks. 3.2. Diverse society. What would you look for if you were searching for a new homeland? You might look for a place that's processed and productive and tolerant for differences. For many immigrants, the middle colony seemed like such a place. A main idea. In addition to being economically successful, the main idea was culturally diverse. Open cities, a stream of settlers hungry for new opportunities moves to cities along the Atlantic coast, especially the ports of New York City and Philadelphia. As colonies produced more and more goods, trade from these ports also grew, and people could find a variety of work in the cities. Found in the city Philadelphia was the fastest growing city in the colony. It started out as a village on the Delaware River, and it grew to more than 22,000 people in city hundred. In fact, since 1960, the population had rocketed to roughly 20,000 people. 20,000 people. Out of Scraping, the New York, Boston, the city thrived on crops and trade, protecting the ocean, forage relationships with farmers who needed to sell their wheat, livestock, and lumber, and with the dealers who wanted to market. Hey, what? So this is what the hell? Dude, you're talking about these commodities are good to the West Indies. The physical is not for Rory City in the colony. Starting out in a village in the Delaware River, it grew to 2,000 people. So the college rounded to that people, asking New York, Boston, to city thrive across and trade to the merchants for the relationship with farmers who needed to sell their wheat, livestock, and lumber, and with the dealers who wanted to market their commodities or goods in the West Indies or elsewhere. The Hills Agree was an attractive city. The village's founder, William Penn, drew up Penn's Philadelphia by establishing their own colony. He convinced the city as a large country town, a wide streets with pattern, public parking, public parking, equal lots, and brick houses. Bro, one of Philadelphia's most famous brick buildings is Independence Hall, which was called the Pennsylvania State House and was first established in 1753. Meanwhile, New York City was also expanding. The English Quad City of 1664 as part of the takeover of the Dutch colony, New Netherlands. The brick houses with the low sloping tile roof that lined cities of cobblestone streets look exactly like those in Dutch towns. As the city expanded, the English made their mark by building houses of brick and wood in their style. When the English took over the city of New York, merchants maintained ties with the Netherlands and its colonies, such as the West Indies. They continued to ship grain, flour, dried fish, timber, and other goods to Amsterdam. After that, because of these ties, New York City's uh, uh, New York City's population more than doubled between this 2020 and 2016. Yeah, wow. It's different. It's different. That's cool. And this is an American product. Cities and the colonies wouldn't have grown. You can be pretty if you want to, but fine. You want to, but could have grown without the work of artisans like Curtis of New York. He made several tea pop around 1720. He should the spell to the form of a bird, the grave, the precision. It shows it to the side. Also, this is a picture I've been looking for a while. So that's the United States. That's the German Empire, I think. Or that's France. That's the United States. And that's the United States. That's I don't know what that is. That's the United States. So, Carl, why not? Wow. Okay. And this is called the Philadelphia Roadhouses. Philadelphia Roadhouses. The houses of Society Hill dates up there to around 690 AD. One out of 1690 AD. Roadhouses like these help support the growing number of people living near the busy docks where goods were traded. This is the map. This is how it looked like. Pretty small, right? Nah, fine. Very of immigrants. When the English took possession of New Netherlands, it was already home to the Dutch, Swedes, Finns, Norwegian, foreign Protestants, Jews, and other settlers. This diverse, a wide variety of people, purely due to the Dutch, who had open immigration to many different groups. It made the population also of the middle colonies unique about the regions. After the English took over, most new immigrants came from England, Germany. German artisans created Pennsylvania long rifle for hunting. The Dutch designed Coldstone wagon, which capable of carrying up 4 tons of cargo. Other German artists were iron workers, makers of glass, furniture, and kitchenware. The farmland and cities drew immigrants to build colonies, but immigrants also came to enjoy something that was less important, less concrete, but perhaps even more important: religious freedom. One region, one deals or events caused the population of New York to change over time. To compare because the population of Bill College to different from that of New England South College. Three, identify main ideas and details. How did German immigrants contribute to the success of the Bill colonies? 3.3 Cultures of the Middle Colonies. You probably know this from your own experience with your classmates. Teens just go better if you try to get along. For the most part, that's what people in middle colonies discovered too. Main idea. While the middle colonies made an odds attempt to tolerate different regions, tension still exists between different races. Religious tolerance. With people, come on, why am I not this much again? Religious tolerance. With people from all walks of life pouring to the middle colonies, everything is shown the religious tolerance. Arts said in order to establish the community, this open mindedness, the hard legends of the Dutch, the Netherlands, the Jews practice and all religion freely became citizens. The Dutch also looked at many Protestant groups not recognized by the church, including Protestantism, Protestantism, and Lutheran. In fact, the pilgrims were centered in Parma, Massachusetts, had originally gone to live in the city of Lenin, in the Netherlands because of the religious intolerance they found there. The Dutch carried their practice of tolerance across the sea of New Netherlands, where continued after the English took over. Less than 100 miles away, William Penn found Pennsylvania as a free colony, not just for quarters, but for other regions as well. Equal rights and opportunities. As a result, quality attracted many different personally face practice or faith to the empress. This group emphasized personal faith in a simple life. It also valued humility and submission. Quarters believed that all people were equal in the eyes of God. They saw religion as a personal matter and did not demand conformity or obedience to strict set of beliefs. Quarters were also the first group of Americans to ban slaveholding. tension between races. But most people in the middle colonies didn't share the quarter's view. But when the English acquired the island in 1664, they estimated 20% of the population was African. Dutch West India Company provided half region to older enslaved Africans. This meant that they released them, but not the children to slavery. All slaves worked for wages to buy their freedom. As a result, by 1864, one-fifth of all Africans were free. College with the diversity did not extend to the Africans, the, to the Africans and African Americans. Whether they were free or slaves, most African Americans in the middle colonies lived in New York City. By 1711, about 40% of household de- de- uh, households household. Oh, don't forget where it was. Household, oh, household, house, household. Oh, man, why, householders? They had been released with one slave. Many enslaved people were still workers and lived and worked as free indentured whites. Enslaved African Americans who owners and then ran out taxes for them after solid work on their own. Were paying rent to New York the sign so many African Americans in the streets of New York made white people fearful. The law was put in effect requiring that all hiring of slaves could be done in one place. The slave market. This put still more restrictions on the lives of the African Americans. In return, white people began to worry about the slave rebellion. The fears became reality on the night of April 6, 1712, where about 27 people set fire to a building, attacking the white man who came to put him out. 9 white people were killed, and the terror spread up and down the Atlantic coast. And in the case of later slave revolts, considering the revenge to taking the African American community far outweighed any violence the rebels had committed. The wake of a new, come on, of a new, 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 and this is did he get shot? Oh, quarter meeting by identified British artists from 1600 to 1825. This is how it looks like. This is how it looks like, right? Okay, see, but I'm gonna go back. I forgot. In wake of new, whoa! In the wake of a New York revolt, 13 enslaved African Americans were hanged. 3 burned in the stake, 1 tortured, and others starved to death in chains. Some white colonists, however, questioned the brutality of slavery. 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 Wasn't it violent? The Bible's golden rule, which says to act towards others as you want others to act towards you. Two slaves and others certainly would not like to be enslaved in return. Other rights opposed slavery simply out of fear of slave rebellions. Despite these considerations, slavery became part of early American culture and remained so for more than 150 years. This museum of fine art, the groups, according to how paid, according to individual should decide how to worship. People sat silent in corner meetings, began praying until they felt that God would speak. They wore plain clothes and spoke plainly, even to the nobility. It's painted by other artists from late 1700s or 1800s, capturing the feeling of a court meeting. Historically, one region. How did the Dutch colonists show the tolerance for religion, diversity, and the Netherlands to make it efficient? Why do you think the courts said other regions and races? It's free and valid. Texas claims that revenge taken on the African American community far outweighed any violence the rebellions had committed. What evidence supports that? Number one, colonial men and women. As a girl, can you imagine rights reserved for only the boy for only boys, only for boys? As a boy, can you imagine being denied rights because your family like a well? That's the way it was in the colonies. Man, the rights and wealth, right? Even distribute across religions, social classes, races, genders, and colonial American society. Come on, read all of that again. Bro, so make me read all of this. Why does it do this to me? That text, come on. I hate this text so much. I read all of that? All of that? I want to be right to want to do it. And then y'all first. Your mind was, well, just do it. Rights and wealth. Between 1720 and 1763, the diverse the diverse American population experienced changes in many aspects of their lives. In science, doctors, um, astronomers, understanding how the disease is spread. People examine traditions and laws. The changes spread throughout the colony. However, ideas were represented. Representative, representative, their origin, representative. Where is it? Very called ideas represented to trade. Forward with restricted white men. It could to be it and to a second room. Only land-owning men could vote during elections. Men who were Catholic or Jewish were denied the vote based on religion. Servants, slaves, and men without property were also burned. Men with a small amount of land or personal property had to pay to vote. On the land, it was plentiful and industry booming. Wealth in the colonies would not even distribute. This was especially visible in cities. Honestly, wealthy merchants built matches and bought coaches with income from trade with other nations or colonies. Less fortunate city dwellers worked for low wages, employed altogether. For instance, seamen or artisans who relied on trade could be out of a job if the demand for goods decreased. In addition, the proportion or quickly growing towns like sanitation put many people at risk from the spread of disease. Royal role of women. Life was tough for both such colonial men and women. The woman had few choices. In rural areas, white women cooked, cleaned, sewed, reared children, and helped with farm taxes. Me also made candles, soap, and other items to sell or exchange for goods. Most African Americans, women, were enslaved. They worked in the fields, cooked and cleaned, and tended to the slavery home family over the lives and practically only led an easy life. They supervised the household, slaves, and servants inside and oversaw and built federation. the city, women cared for their children in the household, wealthier wives employed servants, some depended on slaves, some worked alongside their husbands in shops and businesses. Other women served as midwives, helping deliver babies. Poor women often made money by mending and washing and ironing clothes, provide domestic Damascus domestic services. Fewer women worked outside the home. Women had fewer legal rights, but most of the colonial period, they got a vote, they lost the right to national property, they earned a living once they married. But many women rely the church for the social life, so all colonists will be asked to pay more attention to the spirit life as well. Historically, one region. What requirements did the president have to make it to eligible to vote in the colonial America? To identify many details? What did support the idea that wealth would not distributed colonial America? See? America City? Analysis causes analysis visual, which household tax may have posed the biggest problem for colonial women use information as a visual to explain your answer. Okay, see, this is why I feel like that's different. Oh, come on, there's no way 4.4 is 3 pages long. Not two. What the mean doesn't mean. Box iron. Okay. Box iron. The first electric iron was introduced in 1882. Sunk heated in a fire, sunk placed in box. A box iron. Easy to carry fabrics of fabrics in the United States in colonial times, so ironing was not such a part of laundry, which was hard work in every stage. The box iron had a hatch in the back where the woman started in a hot metal a piece called a slug. Once slug sat on the fire, then the one the iron cooks cool, the woman switched them. So this is the hatch. This is the hatch lever. This is the hatch door. This is the hatch. This is the slug. And this is the butter. For a colonial woman making butter, speaking with milking a cow, the milk sat and it continued until the cream rose to the top. The woman skimmed off the cream and put it into a butter churn. She would then dash it up and down in circles, churning, cutting cream after one could be minutes or hours. Butterford along could be buttermilk. Along with buttermilk, the final step was to strain the butter to separate the two. The first U.S. butter factory opened in 1856. So this is the dasher, this is the special top, this is cream. Did he use, bro? He literally used Wiki How again. This is Wiki How. Except that the difference is it's white this time, so he hides it. It's definitely he definitely did it. He's Wiki How do it. Let's create Wiki How. And this is the punch disc. Ben Warmer. He from the fireplace of the colonial hold the aspirin for rich food. The house couldn't be heated, however the bed is could. The colonial woman filled the pan with a bed warmer with a glowing coals from room to room. She moved the pot around to cover to the heat evenly. Then she went along to the next bed. So the first electric blanket was invented in 1912. Wow, okay, fine. Wow, okay. So these are holes to vents, and these are hot coals, rocks, or bricks. Or brick. I mean, uh, all in the day, all in a day's work. In the days before electricity in grocery stores, colonial women and later the women and early African American labor labor maintained their homes and families. There was cream to chug the butter. There was fires to struggle close to irons, along with all the other aspects of making sure the family was fed and warm. Alright, we're done. Yay! 4.2. Come on, it's not even good enough. I've never all of that, really. Take two. Alright. Well, 4.2. The Great Awakening. The Great Awakening and Alignment. Have you ever listened to someone who made you think about a familiar topic in a new way? Something that I'm happy to call this in the early 1600s and reawakening the dedication to religion. Man, the alignment, emphasizing reason, and the great awakening and religious renewal helped shape colonial thought. The Great Awakening. You probably remember that many of the first colonialists came to America to seek religious freedom, but once they achieved it, they began to focus on the material concerns of everyday life. People concentrated on the work and their homes. As a result, by the early 1700s, people's passage of religion had begun to die out. Some even stopped going to church regularly. Many protesters and ministers feared that colonists would lose its sight of the purpose of God. In an effort to inspire people to the spirit of belief, the ministers gave sternly sometimes for Friday. Sermons during a series of religious survival stories of the Great Awakening. One of the most effective of these ministers was John Edwards of Massachusetts, 1734. He made the purging sermons of salvation, the deliverance of sin, the deliverance from sin. It is most famous of sermon sinners in the hands of the God. Edwards compared his religion to spiders. God, he said, held them by a string over the fires of hell. If they failed to see a salvation, he warned God to simply let go of the string. Another Mr. George Whitefield came from the British to preach salvation to the colonists with deferring gestures and thundering words. He appealed to people's emotions and brought them to tears. Some even fainted. The revivals of the Great Awakening changed how people viewed religion and morality. People began to believe they did not need church officials to yeah, a ray of hope. Jonathan Edwards delivered Signet of the Heads of Angry Guys, 1741, to Congregation in Kentucky. Lord George Whitefield Edwards spoke. You see, I told you to come study eventually. See, I don't know what is going on. I don't know what's going on here. We're only at 4.2. It was the end of 4.4. No. Oh. So we went to Lord George Whitefield and we spoke in Kentucky. Lord George Whitefield, Edwards spoke in a quiet voice and used few gestures. His message caused new historian in literature. Is an expert for the ceremony. After threatening his audience that nation, Evers offers them a chance to be saved. How do you think Evers listeners respond to his works from primary source? And now you have answer an extraordinary opportunity. They were in Christ has thrown the door and the mercy wide open and stands in the door calling and crying with a loud voice to poor sinners. How awful is it to be left behind at such a day? To see so much rejoicing and singing for joy of heart, while you have cause to mouth for storm of heart. How can we rest one moment in such a condition? Therefore, let everyone that's out condition that not necessarily Christian now awake and fly from the wrath period to come. From sinners in the hands of an angry God, by Jonathan Edwards in by 1741. Church of England minister George Whitefield appealed to many races and classes his promise of a more equal or urgent relationship between beliefs and God. Here, artist of John of Colonial portrays a meeting during one Whitefield's 7 visits to the colonies. The painting dates to the mid of the 1700s, and this is a picture of him. And this is a picture of him. I still have to do this. Well, okay, fine. Because people begin to believe they not need church officials of, to collect with God. Even more the donation, they begin to challenge offering some equal to those in power. The alignment. The Great Awakening was one of the old movement that helped pave the way for the revolution of fervor. The intentional movement known as the Great philosophy. Enlightenment spread from Great Britain to the colonies is 1700. Bro, stop! Enlightenment thinkers with the light of human reason would shatter the darkness of idiocy, superstition, and offer parts during often influenced by the scientific revolution which began in Europe around the mid 1550s and used logic thinking to answer scientific questions. The Enlightenment encouraged people to use logic to answer questions instead of just accepting what religious and political figures told them. The ideas of John Locke, a steady hundred English philosopher, greatly influenced Enlightenment's thoughts. Locke said that humans were born free and equal with natural rights. Our rights, such as liberty and our life or liberty, that a person is born with. She also claimed that leader could rule with the consent of the people. If rulers failed to protect the people's rights, Locke believed they had the right to overthrow them. These ideas would provide huge influence this is a healing essential to in the colonies. American Enlightenment leaders include Benjamin Franklin, who devoted his life to post-surface science, entire Franklin, and many other American founders was start to demand their own rights and freedom. Historic figures, one region. What was the Great Awakening? Two, divide ideas in the details. What were some of John Locke's beliefs? Three, draw conclusions. What did the alignment of Great Awakening contribute to colonial views about equality and government? 4.3. Rights in England and the colonies. The colonies was it the colonies saying they studied English and felt they were entitled to the same rights in citizen equal joy. For a while, it was never let them think that. Bad idea. Political changes in England and balance the power between the Parliament and the King helped set American colonies in the path of democracy. Alright. Before we start though, actually no, we're starting with that. Is a part of it. For the English themselves haven't hadn't always enjoyed many rights. As you have learned, the Modern Charter or Great Charter began to change all. The Magna Charter protection put to keep English people from losing their freedom or property unless the law of the land ruled against them. This important document held the good rights to the Parliament, the legislative body of England, and later Great Britain. The Parliament included two houses: the House of the Lords, made up of nobles and high church bishops, and the House of Commons, whose members were elected by mill owners. The power, Parliament power grew in the late 1600s after clashing with King James II, who was a Claffin. Fearing James would make England a Catholic country under authority law, prominent leaders exiled him to France and divided the Protestant daughter Mary and her husband William to the throne. And this is how it looks like. The modern Carter in the colonies. The stained glass in the modern House of London, England, home to see the Lord Mayor depicts the signet of the modern quarter. The document established the king without above the law. The Henry III, Charles II reissued society revised Spartan constitution in 1216, 1217, and 1225. The 1225 version became 1225. What? The 1225 version became England English law, and the 1297, 100 years later, the English colony became that they too says the rights to guarantees the market culture. During the American Revolution, colonies drew on principles in the market culture for the distinguishing of independence, rebelling against the triumph of King George III. Colonial assemblies. The American the, at the same time Parliament. Hold on, I'm gonna do this. See this guy? James critical theory. James II was often in conflict with the Parliament in New England and with the colony. He would follow colonial tribes from New Jersey to Maine and established dominant New England, which details of this painting conveyed the king's high status. At the same time, the Parliament permanently eliminated the English democracy's power, and established Parliament's control of taxation, taxes, taxation, taxation, and its right to pass laws. It also secured the independence of the courts. The Parliament consent with necessary to raise an army in peacetime and for any foreign invasions. The bloodless overthrow of James II and transfer of power to Parliament was called the Glorious Revolution. The Parliament created the English Bill of Rights of 1689 to formally protect the rights of English citizens in Parliament. Many believe the balancing of power would prevent individual or social groups from going to autonomy. Power is shared by the king, the nobles, and the common people is thought to be more of the way to help the English avoid more. destroying force of government that could communicate further deliberating the some portion for the population. Colonial attempted to make colonies following the governments have been farming by forming elected assemblies similar to the House of Commons. The colonial assemblies consist represented mostly by property owners. The assemblies collect money for taxes, deciding how to spend it. It, on the, if I'm on the, what do you call this? Property owners, like the assemblies collect money fast taxes. On the English legislature, however, the official assembly live in the area represents. The colonies, the leaves, the area, so the representative to live among the people who elected them would be better to understand local interests and needs. And as colonists came to enjoy making decisions and managing their managing some of their own affairs, they began to review the authority. The colony had no reputation involvement. Sometimes they felt they were treated unfairly, especially when Parliament passed laws the cause they didn't like. For the most part, through the English government was so busy fighting foreign wars to experience the country itself. So the government done policy salty neglect from the colony. In this policy, the English government did not strictly enforce its colonial policies, and as a result, the colonies grew happier, custody to live in relative isolation from British authority and largely the government itself. Their generally contact with British rule that state affairs was about to change. Historically speaking, one region. How did the Parliament influence the role represented the government in colonies? Two, summarize. How did the Marcos pave the way for the English Bill of Rights? Three different main ideas details. What rights did Parliament establish in the English Bill of Rights? 4.4. Oh, stop. 4.4. John Peter Singer and free speech. Today we speak. Show joke. Show hosts the joke about politicians and criticize our government. We take for granted that people in media are free to say what they want. That's not always good. That's not always the case in the colony. And the trial of John Peter Singer helped pave the way for freedom of the press. Liberal, liberal of free speech. Under Great Britain policy of assaulting neglect, the colonies became used to determine what they couldn't do. In 1733, by British law, it was illegal to criticize the government in print. But John Peters did it. The public majority did anyways. In the newspaper, he printed a series of articles. The British colonial government of New York, William Cosby. A few years before, Cosby had removed a judge who had ruled against him and to try to rig or tamper with the outcome of the election. Another person named James Alexander wrote the article, but it didn't appear in the paper. Unable to determine the author, Cosby went after Zenit, Zenit, Zenger, Zenger, for literally to punishment of life, never 34. He raided jail to his trial August 1985. 35. Governor Cosby expected the trial to be an open and shut case. Any criticism of the government, true or not, was considered illegal. The, the paper had definitely no different criticism of the government. We don't question about that. So Cosby is concerned. Jury had found instead of guilty. And this. I was on how YouTube pictures if you want to, but you can find. I was Andrew Hamilton. I was Andrew Hamilton. Andrew Hamilton. John Peters, Stitcher's lawyer, convinced reason convincingly on Zitter's behalf. This illustration from is 27. Hamilton made his case before the judge. Well, come on, I read all that, though. Come on. Or does it picture how it looks like? Free speech, right. Today, the U.S. Constitution protects all, almost all forms of free speech. I think 1965, in Des Moines, Iowa, in North High School, suspended Mary Bethel Taylor and Prepare John Showhere for wearing armbands to mount American soldiers who had been killed in the Vietnam War. They appealed the U.S. Constitution the rules, and another picture. The rules that the right to you picture if you want to that the right of free speech extends to students at school. The students were allowed to wear their armbands. Gender clear. Although she was confident of the outcome caused by didn't want to take a chance, he packed the jury with all supporters how his judges wife address found out it revealed Cosby's misdeed the New York World Journey of weekly jury, which she continued to publish while Hunter was in jail. The judge replaced Cosby. The jury was called this, but six judges powers continued. The judge dismissed Judge Lawrence but did continue the judge's authority. Meanwhile, judges found friends by Andrew Hamilton, a famous Philadelphia lawyer, to take over the case. Hamilton took a novel approach. He admits that Zernin had printed articles President Cosby. How to agree? How the jail should be considered to defend the criticism were true. Should Zender be jailed? Should Zender be should Zender be jailed for doing his job correctly? And the newspaper publisher preaching the truth. How to without argument and freedom of the press was such a part of the colony, and the act is checked because of the abuses of the colony government. In closing, Houghton urges the jury to grant them, to which the nature and laws of the country had given us the right, both of exposing and opposing the imperative power, as being right and true. After a short time, the jury returned to the court with a verdict of not guilty. Intended was released. The victory paved the way to gaining freedom of the press, also unified the colony and the pursuit of the right. But the colonists still considering themselves the British citizens to the United and joined forces with Britain in war. Historic figure, one region. Why was John Peter in charge of the Liberal? To identify main ideas in detail. Why did Willard Collins assume that John Peter Surgeon would be found guilty? 3. Specify. What was the outcome of Tinker's visit of Dosmas similar to the outcome of Surgeon's trial? And this was the battles of the New France. All from 1754 to 17. If I look at it, in France actually used to own the French colonies before. Oh no, they did not. This is how it looks like. So the red ones are British fisheries, and blue ones are fisheries of the French. And by this war, I think I know who won. Yeah. Alright. For war, the 5.1. 5.1. The first one, I think this is the only one that has it, but I'm not really sure now. 5.1. War begins. Fire keepers. That's what the French might have said when 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 the French said what they might have said was to claim pride recently state the Ohio Valley for themselves. For the British, the American colonies meant were different. Come on. Many competition for land and first involved France and Great Britain in many years of war in North America, starting with the French Indian War. Seed of colony. When French fur traders first came to North America in the 1600s, they set a few forts and trading posts. They started a large valley. As you may recall, the French traded with the Huron and our plan there for almost 1,100 years. But after French trappers killed many of the animals in the area and first pirates dwindled, they resettled the Ohio Valley. This land was also claimed by Great Britain. So in 1640, the British joined forces with the Irish and pushed the French traders out of the way, out of the valley. Further, the Ohio Valley was built to colonial settlers. In 1749, they were eager to buy land shares from the Ohio Company of Virginia, which promoted the westward settlement of colonies of Virginia. The French, having given up their claim to the land, they built a number of forts there, including of Fort LaBeouf in northwest Pennsylvania. In 1752, the French destroyed Piccadilly, a colonial trading post, in an effort to settle the dispute over Ohio Valley peacefully. The British government of Virginia said of the young colonial army leader named George Washington Fort Lebanon eventually. Not surprisingly, they refused. And that's not surprising. It's colonial involvement. It's essentially for the British need decided to work for full measures because at the time because they didn't lose every battle. It said the newly promoted colonial Washington a small number of troops to capture the fort of Duquesne in order to imprison the Pittsburgh. When he arrived, George Washington quickly realized he was outnumbered, struggling to defend the troops. People of William Mary or astonished, which he felt needed for the situation was hopeless. French and Native American troops surrounded the fort and attacked, causing heavy losses for Washington's troops. defeated, Washington surrendered and ended the divorce. May succeeded the beginning of the French Indian War for Britain and France. This war was one of the larger ones called the 7 Year War. It officially began in 1756 and ended in 1763. They talk about the last capture, so I don't know what the hell they're talking about. It pitted these two great powers in struggle over the land in Europe. The colonists, meanwhile, were concerned with land in North America, sending colonies to delegate to a Congress in Alabama, New York, to discuss uniting the colonies to fight the French for that land. The delegates adopted Benjamin Franklin's abandoned plan of unity, which proposed to the central government the power to tax, pass laws, and oversee military defense for the colonies. When the delegates returned home with the proposal, none of the colonies approved it. But the colonists were united in determination to fight for land and consider theirs. And they too infested the British to help them. The historian thinking, one region. How did the French cause a conflict between the French and the British? To spread maps. Around one bodies of war where many of the battles fought. Three identify made details. One was the purpose of the Allied kind of Union. 5.2 Quebec and the British victory. The things behind the French and Indian War, ultimately the outcome of the war was determined which countries controlled North America. The British and French fought for control of North America in the French and Indian War. Extensive losses on both sides. Early British losses. A British and the colonies discussed for help. The British jumped to the fight. In 1755, they helped send British General Edward Braddock and two regiments to North America to destroy French forts. George Washington accomplished Braddock he marched with his more than 2,000 soldiers through the Virginia backcountry on a mission to capture Fort Dickinson. Braddock was confident that the highly trained soldiers would quickly defeat the enemy. He was wrong. The British soldiers were totally unprepared for fighting in the front. Their weapons, the weapons were too big to matter. They offered many of the neighboring scouts they recruited to lead the way. Because most of the minded soldiers, the army's slow progress gave the French plenty of time to the notice of the colonies arrive. As a result, the French and Indian American troops were lying away from them. The Battle of the Montgrasses fought just east of President. They hid behind trees and ambushed Bardock's army as it marched by. Used to farming hiding in battlegrounds where Baltimore sides for the roads. The soldiers were called to be off guard. Washington suggests that the British raids and fight from behind. The fight from behind trees unlike the French, but Bardock refused. Braddock refused. Within a few hours, nearly two-thirds of the British forces lay dead or wounded. Braddock himself soon died of his wounds. Washington his uniform ripped by bullets helped lead the retreat. Losses continued to plague the British in the early years of the war. In New York, the British seized Fort William Henry, Fort Olson, and 2,000 British soldiers in Lake George. The British defeated the body Native American tribes, allowing the French to attack British settlements in the backcountry, where they killed and captured 100 settlers. Teasing blamed for the British and colonial forces. And this is a Native American club. Bar Dog and then watching face Native Americans holding weapons like this one. The kind of team you use for the golf to try to hit the ball to the hole. Yeah. But Bar Dog is a man likely face Native Americans holding weapons like this one. We have wood brass. The maker of the weapon carved the ball on the end of the wood, 2.5 feet or nearly 1 yard long. These clubs can be designated weapons. Critical view. At the moment captured here in the Battle of Monterey, Washington is still on his horse and in command, and as the wounded General Brad, Brad Doc falls behind him. Judas registered painted Washington as a captain in the French and Indian War around 1851. In the time before the photographer, how did this painting effectively convey image about this battle? And here's the image. Here's what you have to read. French defeat. The tide turned British statesmen to Sir William Pitt poured money and money and men into the water. July 1658, the British claimed country of Louisbourg and Nova Scotus. Alarmed the French pulled the troops from Ohio Valley to Quebec and marched up. The chief led the British to take control of the West. But none of it consistent. The French are all California. Oh, that's coffee for French supplies. And we need by smallpox. They bring the end of war in the backcountry. Even the extra troop, the French could not see Quebec. British country see 1759 to the Battle of Quebec. Encouraged by these, eventually the Actors joined forces with Britain in 1060. The British country of Montreal ended France British control of Canada. The defeat of the French in Canada marked the end of the war with France and North America. A treaty would be signed, but the war had a lasting impact on everyone who took part in it. For its 1,000 of colonists had joined the British Army. They found that at best, the British soldiers and officers looked down on them. At the worst, the British did not suffer punishment. Soldiers for small offenses. Colonial soldiers didn't feel that they'd been treated like allies. The war would also cause great suffering to Native Americans, so settlers would be even more under the homeland. Sorry for the region. How did Randolph defeat and Fort Aduxy show that the British were not ready for frontier war? To identify main ideas and details. What turned the tide of the French and Indian War? Geology. What happened to Braddock if Washington marched the country for Duquesne? Impact of the war. The colonists celebrated British victory in the French and Indian War. New York even raised a statue of King George III. But the colonists love of the King endures. We'll see. Or would they revolt again? If maybe beat them, that will happen in this capture. I feel so. I'm not really sure. I'm not sure. Actually, it will happen next unit. Next unit will happen. That's unit 3. And we're not gonna do this for the long. So yeah. Maybe between the French and Indian War, despite the British territory. but led to conflict with the Native Americans in the Ohio River Valley. What's are always texts here? The treaty appears. Sensitively British fragment appears negotiate a treaty, a peace agreement. The resulting treaty appears officially ending the French Indian War. According to terms, France lost all its territory, lost all of its power. North America, its British ally, Spain acquired New Orleans and Louisiana territory west of the Mississippi. The British gained Canada from France and Florida from Spain in exchange for Cuba and exchange for Cuba and the Philippines. Britain now controlled all of the land in North America east of the Mississippi River. The colonists also reaped some of the rewards from the treaty. They received right to fish in the Lower Atlantic off the coast of Canada. The colonists also assumed that they were free to settle the Ohio Valley. The Protest Rebellion. Not everyone in North America was happy when the French Indian War ended. The war had been a disaster for Native Americans. While the French had resisted them with gifts each year, the British ended this custom and did raise prices on trade goods. Worse yet, the British government limited what and how much Native Americans could trade. Additionally, white settlers streamed into the Ohio Valley after the war, a clear violation of the city treaty. The British trade policies and land grabbing drove the large numbers of Delaware soldiers actually another major team of ours. YouTube usually records video because I'm on all of this. This is how it works. The real life is the Pokemon live. That's it. So this now is at treaty periods. This is as soon as the war ended. Russia is in the north, right? Spanish just owns pretty much everything. France is just nowhere. But Haiti, and the British just owns all of it. But soon enough, this country was in Jamaica too. But soon enough, all of it will lose that. Wow, that's actually cool though. Part Texas border lies on the ocean. That's why some people look at that. Alright. Come on, I still have to do this. Ultimately, Apollo urged Native Americans in the region to band together. Uh, to rise up to the British enlisted. Apollo had fought along the French and French and Indian War. In 63, led Native Americans launching. They would call it the Apollo's Rebellion. His forces defeated French and British outposts. However, the British successfully defended the most important forces to the Fort Pitt. Sometimes ruthless means reported Washington's rebellion to needed help to replenish ammunition, supplies, and strengthen the Native Americans' ranks throughout the Great Lakes region in western Pennsylvania. He counted on the French to come out to his aid, and they never did. Then when British commanders met the Native American leaders in Fort Pitt, they are said to give them smallpox, infected blankets, and have covered gifts, chiefs, and gifts, hoping to spread disease among the Indian tribe. Fighting continued for 2 more years. During the war, the king issued a proclamation calling Castillo west of his line drawn around the Appalachian Mountains from Maine to Georgia. This area colonists and who wondered what they had been fighting for. They also represented to continue defending the British crew in the homeland. The soldier and there was someone, of course, behavior served as a daily reminder of the beloved colony. In time, colonists began to regard British authority more critically. And this is by cheetah poetry. And this is how he looks like. See that the picture what? This is how he looks like. Alright. Army stories. Why Ghostman and English commanders say to him that some commanders are dead, so they brew him they're dead. Fresh brothers do. He last to me is I do. If he adds anything for us, he replied he is no use for us. From all this, we we can well see that they are sealing our room. Just like my brothers, we must all swear the destruction it will no longer. Chief Fulton is a speech to the counselor of the American Detroit, May 1763. What history region? How did she appear in power in North America? To be mass. Which country is getting the most country of the 1763? The British. We specify. How did the outcome of the war by the Native Americans? Chapter 4. Colonial Development Review. Eugene's following vocabulary words. This sentence to the shows the terms mean. Southern farming. Family practices southern farming. They usually harvest just enough food to survive. It will have a little left. Or some provision, religious freedom, parents, crash crops, by country, grace meal, diverse, limited trading posts, researching. There might be details. If you have just create chart and find the detail about the development of the country, call it develop. They detail blake. Lemon. Why did you use African labor to grow over time in summer colonies? While fishing, going to comment new the Little 1.1, how did triangle trade to strategy slavery? Little 1.2, why did Charlestown be smaller than the largest city? Let's 2.1. What was the Southern Rebellion? Let's 2.3. How did the Christian affect the economy of the middle colonies? Let's put 3.1. What are interested in the region such as New York City in the early 1700s? Let's 3.3. In what ways did women add to the colonies? The colony of the Fed? Let's 4.1. How did ministers like Jonathan Edwards and George Whitefield contribute to Great Awakening? The 42. What was the creation of the Alvin Pad of the Unity? Let's 5.1. By the point of rebellion, let's 5.3. 23. I think the following question supporting interactions with areas of country. 2. 22. If it's accurate increase in something. 23. Another concept. How did influence the presence lead to growth in education inequalities? 24. Compare and contrast. How society in the backcountry differ from society cheesecake in South Korea? 25. How great raising is allowing to continue to emergency 5. 26. Forest support opinion. Where neighbors and better off dealing with French traders and British settlements, support your opinion with areas for the classroom. 1. 2. 47. Strong conclusion. How did the British portray the French Indian War change this discussion this distributions of power in North America? Look into the map. Look closely at the map. The African American population in British colony statistically. The African question below. African American population. So most of them lived at North Carolina and Virginia, and this is how the map looks like. So but most of it, this is how it looks like. Okay. African apology. So yeah, how the African American apology South Carolina different from Virginia. Sorry, to send for French the American forces to try to free the veterans killed 50 people take the 200 captive. Stephen Williams. Oh, come on. No, no, leave me alone. What the? Stephen William, 11-year captain, came journal while he's a prisoner. He tries to tag, read an effort, and answer a question. I read. The French Indians came surprised their foreign entity. And after they broke into our house, took us prisoners, and they buried him, buried a sister of mine, and the center of theirs. They arrived at our house, they marched away with us. Their cousins said our house in bar fair as it was part of the town. Three, how the stores helps us develop an understanding of the town. 31. It's clear that 31. During to your life, feeding this onto the introduction, someone tried to remove from structure and useful. What work is involved in this movie? What does perfect do to get to new neighbors, teachers, friends? What rap premiere? Where yeah, made to this spirit? What that I call this? Tips. The child that for college list basic college basic America, the main list of challenges involved in making movie two for me workers for the country in the area, including the narrative, the ties the college experience to that of art students move. We're finally here. I've been waiting for this. So it's might not look like it's not like suspicious to you, but this actually knew it used to look like back then. Yeah, it used to be it was like Bill Hall a few hunts, and now it looks like that. Before New York, right? Peter Bill. That's before New York, right? Peter Bill, it not set to that night. For all the visitors, oh come on, not this long test again. Come on. For all the visitors to New York City in recent years, one was most surprising is Major named Jones. No one actually knows where she came from. She showed up one which working in 2007 on a river bay in prostitute, rebuilt the lodge during the early 17th century. As the city was the Dutch village of New Hampshire, beavers were widely hunted for the pelts fashionable in Europe. The fur trade grew into such a profitable business that imperial beavers earned a place on the city's official seal, which remain today. Because of the high demand for the pills, the real animals vanished. According to Iris Sadler's ecology in the wild, in the WES headquartered in the Bronx Zoo, there hasn't been a beaver in New York City or more than 200 years. Okay, he's spectacle. What a culture told him he the evidence of a bear during walking on the river. It was true. Saturday, the culture found John's lodge coming in the river. They found John himself. The beavers returned to the Big Apple and Hill and the fishery by those who spent more than 3 decades restoring the help to the process river. With the W ground for abandoned cars and trash, Joseph was named in honor of Joe's aide. Sherlock, the congressman from the Bronx, who was reported 15 million in federal funds to support the river cleanup. For almost a decade, Dodger has listed projects to the WES CS to measure the creating the island Manhattan that looks like to the Manhattan project is called actually looking for as the Bay Hill the effort to turn back the clock to see the night before Henry Hudson and his crew sailed into the New York and spawned the island. And before the hills were bubbled and dotted and landmarks were painted over, but Manhattan was wild a chestnut, oak, and hickory trees. It was a salt marshes and grassland with turkey each a bag as and as pleasant a land as one straight up one Hudson reported sandy beaches ran along stretches of both coasts along on the river. For 50 miles along the island where the feasted on claims on oceans, during 6 billion miles of stream flow from behind it. You might find different by today before you use them. There's a red maple swamp right here in Times Square. Simon mentioned that while waiting to cross 7th Avenue, there's a beaver pond. There's a beaver pond. He said it's a bus from Rebel Bob. The last thing that had it is still transferred. The mission wondered what was here before. Simon reminds landscape. He's supposed to figure out how wild places work. Because he's ecology. A landscape from the bottom up. They begin by listening to various ecosystems. They could they cover text. They begin to finish the various is on the island such as Oak Forest class and plays or played. All they divided 55 different economic communities and they refill the wildlife, the survey, the network of relationships. No, 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 no. I don't know. Yeah. No, please, stop. People, no, please. I can't do it anymore, bro. They fill the wildlife discovery network of relationships, the species, habits, and ecosystem. I would identify 100 1,050 species, but this 8,000 relationships with 100 habits. Sanderson hopes his project was similar due to curiosity, but wasn't about having before it hasn't arrived. I like every New Yorker to know what living in place in family ecology. Here, New York is just a place of families, art, music, culture, and communities. It's also a place of amazing natural potential, even if you have to look a little harder. For more natural graphic, America found lots online. You equally envision community. Nah, I'd read all this. 2 hours and 52. That's not good. You're equality. Vision to agree with the communities that are based on the shared relationship belief. Others rules should focus on property for the national resource the content offer. Based on understanding the text, what factors are involved in visioning the community, how might some groups vision conflict with others. Simon, vision the deal community. Although college two people who imagine new life for the new world, considering factors such as for your communities is what sort of role would govern your community and how your community would thrive, being prepared for your community to thrive. Gather evidence. It's featured in community. Gather evidence from the unit and the various factors and the factors of the new communities have considered. There's a category and subcategories that you consider the most important. Review the units together. Evidence that supports your vision. Using gather organize that this one to organize fast. Until company. Blank, 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 blank. There you go. Produce. We really know students digital versions of the community. But my short pack each come out using evidence for these units per your idea. To create you choose to create your idea to present your idea community to your class, consider what is option. Create commercial to people to move to your new community. To details at the start where it is, who prosperity is, there is what the goal of your community would be, and what people who move there might expect. Organize teams and hold a classroom discussion on establishing a new community. Explore questions as such as who hold power, who might be included or excluded, and how the community will support its residents. Design a flyer symbol For your community, describe how elements included on the fly reach your community, why these factors will be important to people who might choose to settle there. That's what I mean. Learning favorite activities. People in leadership member, attitude, responsibility. So, organization, problem solving. Effective leaders says solve the development of deeper lobby of deep lobby relation process to new launcher. The oh my gosh! Effective leaders of a solid deep deep lobby the community communication process. Choose a leader that you read about this unit and using evidence for you read prepare your memo for the unit's point of view. In your memo outline what you have as a leader, comments on which you have approaching problems in your community or colony of diplomacy. Offer examples of specific events or problems that your leader facilitated or captured to present your leadership memo to the class. Create a trade network skill collaboration download story. Work into the content to create trade network start with products or research your trade or groups and one products research your knowledge required. Clarity classes study prices requires products and research to your trade. To determine how your network will exchange goods. Illustrate your trade network on classroom whiteboard, where all groups have added their networks to the board. Discuss the ways in which networks are similar and different from each other. Unit free donation. Ah, it's unit free. I'll do this later on, but my community is taken away again. Let's just do it. Hopeful.